And wouldn't you know it, chat? Wouldn't you know it? But Hedron Archive finally gets to be used. Alright? Target. Acquired. Boom. See, chat? That is how you use Hedron Archive to its maximum potential. You discard it to Kozilek the Great Distortion. My job here is done. Is this what you wanted, chat? You wanted me to cast it? Well, guess what? Guess what, chat? This is where it is. In the trash where it belongs. This video is brought to you by Card Kingdom. Become a legendary supporter of the show by ordering your Commander Legends cards from cardkingdom.com. Hey friends, it's Tomer, and I'm back with another Commander Abridged gameplay video. As is tradition, I asked my YouTube community to choose which commander they'd like to see me play for stream, and Kozilek the Great Distortion won by a landslide. People really wanted to see me play the big Eldrazi Menace. Or so I thought. But if you look at the comments section, you'll see the real reason why everyone ended up voting for Kozilek. It turns out, everyone just wants to see me play the card that will forever haunt me, Hedron Archive. For those who are blissfully unaware, a while back I made a video on why Hedron Archive is overrated. In this video that few people actually watched, but many have strong opinions about, I mentioned that Kozilek the Great Distortion is one of the few decks where Archive is actually good in, something I've repeated many times since. So when Kozilek showed up on a poll, you all jumped at a chance to make me play the card that has now become my legacy. So fine. I'll give you what you want, you jackals, you fiends. You want a Hedron Archive deck? You'll get a Hedron Archive deck. So leading our meme dream is Kozilek the Great Distortion. Kozilek is an absolute powerhouse, refilling your hand when cast, discarding cards to counter spells, and two-shotting opponents with commander damage, which is made even easier thanks to Menace. Kozilek gives you all the tools you need to secure victory, making him a worthy payoff for the hoops you need to jump through to play him as your commander. And the hoops are no joke. Since Kozilek is colorless, we must build a colorless deck around him, meaning we have the smallest pool of cards to work with. And as powerful as he is, our commander costs a whopping 10 mana to cast, making him one of the most mana-hungry commanders in the entire format. So in order to get this bad boy onto the battlefield, we're going to load up the deck with a ton of mana. I'm not kidding. At least 30 cards in our deck act as ramp to cast Kozilek as quickly and consistently as possible. The ramp package is a mix of mana rocks like Everflowing Chalice, Thran Dynamo, and yes, Hedron Archive, along with more unique sources like Blinkmoth Urn and Forsaken Monument, which generate an obscene amount of colorless mana in this deck, or Geode Golem, whose combat trigger lets us cast our 10 mana commander for free. So the plan of this deck is to ramp hard and fast, cast Kozilek as quickly as possible, and then send our opponents to a tentacle-filled doom. Even though our deck is basically just a pile of mana, we're not worried about getting empty-handed since Kozilek refills our hand when cast, and we're not worried about flooding out because any excess ramp can be used as ammo for Kozilek's counter magic. It's really a beautiful synergy. The only downside is that since our deck is almost all artifacts, we get absolutely stomped by mass artifact removal, but c'est la vie. Now, this deck is definitely a lot more expensive than my usual brews because I felt that I couldn't do Kozilek justice at my usual budget of $100. Let me know if you want to see more pricey brews like this one in the future, or if you'd prefer that I stick with a $100 list going forward. Now, with the deck intro out of the way, let's hop into the games. Game 1's first opponent is Megablin, who I will call M, playing Sun Quan, Lord of Wu. This is usually an aggressive combat-focused deck that floods the board with creatures that have powerful combat triggers, with Sun giving them all evasion. Next opponent is returning player TLUR, who I will call T, running another aggressive deck, Adriana, Captain of the Guard. Adriana is a Boros token deck, looking to flood the board with creatures and then pump them for lethal damage. Our final opponent is returning player Knusp, who I will call K, running Surkara the Bold. Surkara is a ping deck, looking to generate a ton of card advantage with its commander while burning away the opposition. Of the opposing commanders, all of them are fairly aggressive, but none of the commanders are powerful enough to make them enemy number 1 right off the bat. Since we're essentially an artifact deck, having a red and Boros deck at the table is definitely a concern, but there's not much we can do about that. I go into this game with the plan to focus on whatever deck is most ahead in terms of both board state and cards in hand. We win a die roll and go first, you'll love to see it. We mull away a bad hand and then keep a decent 7. We've got 2 lands and a bunch of ramp, though we'll need to top deck some lands to round out this hand and cast our commander. I kick things off by playing Urza's Tower and casting Manifold Key. Then I goof and cast Mox Opal, mistakenly thinking that I can already tap it, but I actually need one more artifact. Megablin plays a Rogue's Passage, T plays Myriad Landscape, and K plays a Mountain and casts Quest for Pure Flame, setting up for a big damage turn in the future. On our turn, I play a land and cast Voltaic Key. We've got 2 keys and nothing worth untapping, but that should change once we cast our Worn Power Stone next turn. M plays an island and casts Rootwater Thief, the first of likely many evasive combat-focused creatures. T plays a mountain, casts Sol Ring, and cracks Myriad Landscape to ramp out 2 planes. K plays a mountain and casts Everflowing Chalice, kicked once. I play Scavenging Grounds and cast Worn Power Stone. Now we can finally start putting our keys to good use, untapping our Power Stone twice for 2 more activations to cast Palladium Mirror. Look how smart I am, playing the cards I put in my deck correctly. We now have a whopping 10 mana on turn 3, which will allow us to cast our Tentacle Daddy next turn. M plays an island, hits T with the Thief, then casts Nurok Commando. T plays a mountain, casts Leonin Warleader with the cutest artwork, then casts and equips Explorer's Scope. K casts Spinning Wheel, and then plays Desert of the Fervent. With our artifacts surviving and our opponents tapped out, the coast is clear for our Lovecraftian horror to come out and play. I cast Sol Ring and casually generate 10 mana to cast Kozilek the Great Distortion, drawing us 5 cards in the process. I then play Seagate Wreckage and cast Wayfarer's Bauble, though I should have kept up the mana for Warping Whale instead. Punt aside, we've got a huge threatening table, a full grip of cards, and even if our opponents manage to remove Kozilek, we even have the mana to recast him. Things are looking great. M plays an island and is unable to attack into our 12/12, so hits K with the commando and draws a card. Then they cast Ninja of the Deep Hours. T plays Shinka the Blood-Soaked Keep and starts deploying more token generators by casting Handwear Garrison and Outlaw's Merriment. Then they hit M with the Warleader and sends the created attacking cat tokens at K. K plays Temple of the False God, which can't tap for mana yet, kind of awkward, and casts Surkara. Everyone's playing catch up to our fast start, but we're still clearly way in the lead. I suspend Mox Tantalite. Yes, I am running this meme card, and I do think it's a solid inclusion in this deck and pretty much nowhere else, much like Hedron Archive. Then I hit T with Kozilek. T has historically brought the scariest decks in past streams, and they have the next scariest board state after me, so I make the decision to make T the first unfortunate victim of our commander. Then I play Buried Ruin, cast Kuldrotha Forgemaster to possibly convert some of our mana rocks into more impressive artifacts, and cast Conduit of Ruin, putting Kozilek, Butcher of Truth on top of our library, then pass, keeping up mana for Warping Whale. M plays Myriad Landscape and hits K with the Ninja and Commando, drawing 2 cards and hoping to find an answer to the board. Then they cast Felwar Stone and pass. T makes a warrior token off Outlaw's Merriment, casts Mentor of the Meek, and swings Leonin Warleader and Handwear Garrison at M and K, making 4 more attacking tokens, drawing 4 cards off Mentor of the Meek, and flipping a Wooded Foothills off the Explorer's Scope. Not a bad attack. K taps out to cast Mana Geyser, which would generate 14 mana to cast a bunch of stuff, so I decide to counter it with Warping Whale to effectively end their turn. Then they play Song Mad Ruins and pass. I continue being absolutely ruthless this game. I cast Navinral's Disc and then sacrifice it, not to its own ability, but to Kuldrotha Forgemaster, along with my Bauble and Opal, fetching Planar Bridge and putting it directly into play. I then activate Planar Bridge, fetching any permanent from our deck, in this case, Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Then I -5 Ugin, exiling each permanent with converted mana cost 5 or less that is 1 or more colors, leaving our opponents with only lands and a couple artifacts. At this point, T has seen enough and concedes, which definitely hurts the chances of our other opponents recovering in this game. So I go and smack M with the Kozilek. M plays a Strip Mine and casts Sphinx Ambassador. Then K actually finds an answer to the creatures with Blasphemous Act, wiping away all creatures, and follows up with Thermo Alchemist. I +2 Ugin to bolt the Alchemist, then activate the bridge again, fetching Ulamog the Infinite Gyro. We don't get its cast trigger, but I figure an indestructible 10/10 with Annihilator 4 should get the job done. M plays an island, casts Moonblade Shinobi, and Thassa's Oracle. K passes through their turn, waiting until our upkeep to activate Spinning Wheel, tapping down Ulamog to prevent its attack. On our turn, we finally get to cast the suspended Mox Tantalite. Then I play Blasted Landscape and recast Kozilek the Great Distortion, refilling our hand, and +2 Ugin to bolt the Oracle. M hits us with the Shinobi, making it unblockable with Rogue's Passage, then ninjutsus in Miss Syndicate Naga, cloning itself. K passes the turn again, but this time doesn't activate the wheel to tap down Ulamog on our turn. Not sure if this was a mistake or not, but we go to combat, annihilating K's board with Ulamog and killing M with the Kozilek. We then bolt K with the Ugin, fetch Hedron Archive with Planar Bridge for the memes, cast Unwinding Clock cause why not, and the game is over. This was a short one-sided game though, so I decided to show off one more game as a treat. On to Game 2. Game 2 has us up against returning player and moderator of the stream, AfroMagic17, who I will call Af, playing Zurgo Helm Smasher. Zurgo is an aggressive Voltron deck, suiting up the commander for maximum damage. Since Zurgo is indestructible on the controller's turn, the deck often runs a lot of board wipes to keep the board clear of everything except for the commander. TLUR, aka T, is back again for revenge, this time upping the power level with partners Bralin, Skyshark Rider, and Shabraz the Skyshark. Bralin and Shabraz, or BS for short, is usually a wheel deck, with both partners easily taking people out through wheels or combos. Finally, we've got returning player Ankylosaur, who I will call Ink, running Wart the Raid Mother. Though underrepresented and a bit eclipsed these days by the newly printed Calamax, Wart is still an incredibly powerful Spellslinger deck, able to copy game-ending spells with minimal setup. Of the opponents, BS is definitely enemy number 1. I've played against enough BS decks to know that even low power versions of the deck are immensely strong, and I have a feeling that T won't be bringing a wimpy version of the deck after the last game. Zurgo is also a threat too, since the deck often runs lots of board wipes, and if those board wipes hit my artifacts, I'm definitely a goner. Actually, with 3 red decks, 2 of them having access to white removal as well, odds are very high that I won't get away with having my artifacts untouched this time around. A grim matchup indeed, but let's see how it goes. Also, this game I'm not going to announce lane drops unless they are exceptional. Let me know if you'd prefer the normal way or this new way in the comments section below. Alright, we jump into the game and have some unfortunate starting hands. The first hand is only 1 land, so we mull for free. The second hand is even worse with 0 lands, so we mull again. And our third hand is the exact opposite problem with 6 lands and an Ulamog. I don't want to mull down to 5, and more lands is better than less lands in this deck, so I keep it, bottoming Ulamog. Each of us play our first land, with Af also casting a turn 1 Shadow Spear. Turn 2 I cycle Blasted Landscape and find a Sol Ring, so our hand is actually developing pretty well now that we've got lands and ramp. Af casts Stoneforge Mystic, tuning for something, but I'm not sure what because I wasn't paying attention. T casts Ominous Seas, setting up for some wheel actions in the future. Ink casts Cryptolith Rite, excellent ramp once they have the tokens to fuel it. On our turn, we cast Sol Ring and Thran Dynamo, and suddenly we're on track again for a turn 4 Kozilek, just like last game. This time though, our opponents know what's up. Af equips Shadow Spear and smacks us with the Mystic, and T is acting a little sus by passing Keeping Up 3 mana. Ink casts Primal Amulet, continuing to set up for future spell slinging. On our turn, I debate whether I should sacrifice Crystal Vein and cast Kozilek into what appears to be a counterspell from T, or just bait the counterspell by casting more ramp and then cast Kozilek next turn. I decide for the latter, casting Forsaken Monument, which T predictably counterspells. Then I pass, which definitely was a punt, since I should have cast Skyclave Relic to get more mana on the table and draw another card off Kozilek next turn. Af smacks Ink with the Mystic, then casts Mangara the Diplomat. This is a surprisingly cautious start from the Zergo deck. T casts Riel the Everwise, another absurdly good card when paired with Wheels, and discard in general. Then Ink also passes the turn, holding up all their mana. On our turn, I cast Kozilek the Great Distortion, drawing 4 cards, including Hedron Archive, and striking terror into the hearts of our opponents. Af casts Hero's Blade and Brass Squire, hanging back this turn. T casts Talisman of Progress and Bralin Skyshark Raider, letting Af draw a card off Mangara. But after countering my Forsaken Monument last turn, I decide to repay the favor in the best way possible. Boom. See, chat? That is how you use Hedron Archive to its maximum potential. You discard it to Kozilek the Great Distortion. My job here is done. Is this what you wanted, chat? You wanted me to cast it? Well, guess what? Guess what, chat? This is where it is. In the trash where it belongs. Oof. Oof. Bring on the downvotes. Bring on the downvotes. Oof. Ah. Ink, again, just passes the turn, I guess holding an awkward hand. On our turn, I'm not sure what to do, so I do the most Seth thing possible and spend 3 mana to activate Bonder's Enclave and draw a single card instead of just dumping the rest of my hand. Then I play Strip Mine, cast Skyclave Relic Kicked, and cast Wayfarer's Bauble. I'm afraid to attack, so I hold off for a turn, planning to cast It That Betrays next turn and hopefully go on the offensive afterwards. Af casts Zergo Helm Smasher, equipping Hero's Blade and Shadow Spear to it, then swings Zergo at me. Zergo only has 11 power though, so I safely block it with the Kozilek, though Af does gain 11 life from the swing. T casts Shabraz and Lightning Greaves, equipping the Greaves to the commander, and hits me with the Flying Shark. I'm clearly the archenemy at the table, and for good reason. Ink finally finds a creature to cast, and it's a good one, Dragon Broodmother. The Broodmother will start making a dragon token on each person's upkeep, so 4 dragons per turn cycle, which will then fuel the Cryptolith Rite among other things. On our turn, I activate Bonder's Enclave, fishing for some action, then cast It That Betrays. Now with an 11/11 blocker, I feel a bit safer attacking. Of my opponents, Af seems like the biggest threat with 6 cards in hand and a scary Zergo swinging my way, so I hit Af with Kozilek. Then Af casts what is probably the single worst card to see for a Kozilek deck, Austere Command, blowing up all artifacts and creatures converted mana cost 4 or greater. This annihilates our board, though thankfully Skyclave Relic survives due to being indestructible. With our board totally nuked, Af turns Zergo over to T, smacking them with the commander. T casts a Locust God, threatening to really go off with a wheel if they ever find one, and casts Wart the Raid Mother. At this point, I feel like this is the calm before the storm. Each opponent has a scary threat on the table, and at any moment they can do something game-winning when they untap, to possibly throw a wrench in their plans, and also to give us a beefy blocker. I drop down a Void Winnower so our opponents can't even. Af plays Mardu Banner and smacks Ink with Zergo, spreading the love. T makes an insect token with the Locust God on draw step, then activates the god to loot, drawing another card off Riel and making 2 more insect tokens. Then T casts Chasm Skulker and smacks me with all their flyers. Ink just passes the turn again, clearly their hand is a bit awkward. Low on options and still a turn away from recasting our commander, I just cast Unstable Obelisk, keeping up mana to either blow something up with the Obelisk or stop an attacker with Labyrinth of Scophos. Af plays Duelist Heritage, activates Shizo Death Storehouse to give Zergo fear, then swings Zergo at us, giving Zergo double strike with the Heritage. Luckily, we've got Labyrinth to stop that 14 commander damage coming at us. At this point, T starts to pop off. T starts by activating the Locust God to loot, triggering a whole mess of things, activates Ominous Seas to make an 8/8 Kraken, then casts Brainstorm to draw 3 more cards and get even more triggers. Just look at those triggers. And then swings their brand new army at both me and Af. At this point, I'm just hoping to top deck a board wipe because things are getting out of hand. Unfortunately for us, things are about to get spicy. Ink swings a Lone Dragon token at Af, not just to send a message, but also to fuel a spell. Howl of the Horde, cast with Raid, so that the next instant or sorcery they cast is copied twice. And the spell they cast is Fall of the Titans for X equals 6, copying it twice with the Howl and a third time with Wart's Conspire ability. The Fall of the Titans spells burn me down to 4, Af down to 3, and take out the Locust God. Burning the Kozilek player down to an inch of their life with Fall of the Titans is definitely a flavor win, so well done there, Ink. At this point, we're absolutely dead on board. I make a final attempt at finding a board wipe by casting Karn, Scion of Urza, and +1ing him, letting Af choose which one of the 2 exiled cards to keep. Unfortunately, all we find is a Lightning Greaves. I activate Bonder's Enclave to draw 1 more card, but alas, no answer. At this point, we have no way to draw and cast either of our 2 outs to this board state, Ugin or All Is Dust, so I decide to go out swinging. I cast and equip the Greaves onto the Winnower and smack Ink once before accepting my fate. Af also goes digging for an answer, cracking Mardu Banner to draw a card, but doesn't seem to find anything. However, Af can kill any opponent with Zergo on the way out, and decides to take out T, giving Zergo Fear and Double Strike and swinging in for 14 commander damage, which combined with the 7 previous damage is a lethal 21 commander damage. T has an answer, however, and exiles Zergo with Swords to Plowshares, gaining Af 7 life and putting him back to 10. Finally, it's time for people to die. T goes for the kill, finishing me off and surprisingly opting to kill Ink instead of Af. I guess T was afraid of Wart untapping and dropping another game-ending nuke, which is reasonable, but unfortunately for T, after tapping out to cast Rhystic Study and recast the Locust God, Af just recasts Zergo and kills T with the exact same attack as last turn. Oopsie! So there you have it, 2 games showcasing Kozilek the Great Distortion, but more importantly, showing the true potential of Hedron Archive. Being discarded like the trash it is. Downvote away, you know I'm right. These were 2 sweet games that showed both the deck's strengths and weaknesses. It's really easy and consistent to ramp out Kozilek by turn 4, and with better hands you can get him out turn 3 or even turn 2, and the result is absolutely disgusting. Refilling your hand, 2-shotting opponents, and countering spells all in one is incredibly powerful. However, since our deck runs on artifacts, we get absolutely destroyed by mass artifact removal, but that's just a risk you take to achieve greatness. The other weakness is you're basically the archenemy at any table, and for good reason, as Game 1 showed off. It's very hard to play politics or be subtle with this deck. Overall though, I love this deck. It's so utterly unique. Being colorless is a huge restriction, yet Kozilek in the command zone makes it all worth it. It feels great to pilot, incredibly consistent, and just feels powerful and fun. It's great to play every once in a while, though I couldn't see myself playing it often. And that wraps up this gameplay video. All these abridged gameplays are recordings from my stream here on YouTube, so if you want to catch these games live, then come hang out with me each Wednesday at 6 PM Eastern Time. Also, if you're interested in playing with me on a future stream, and you have your own commander deck on Magic Online, and are comfortable with voice chat during the game, then send me an email at tomer@mtggoldfish.com, and I'll invite you to my Discord where I set up the games. That's all for now, so until next time friends, see ya! Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, help us out by clicking the like button down below. And to keep up with the latest and greatest, make sure to click the subscribe button. And if you want to watch similar videos, click on the links appearing on screen right now.